Today we're going to talk about innovation and how if you don't innovate, you can perish very quickly, especially in retail these days. I've never seen an industry where technology is changing so fast and you have no choice but adopting. Did you see some really cool technologies at the show so far? Things that you like, things that you're using for your business or plan on using? Yes? Almost 100% yes. Did anyone spend any time telling you how you can fund those technologies? How you could pay for them? I don't see too many hands. We're going to focus today on how you can pay for some of those technologies. My name's Sebastian Grady. I'm the president of a company called Rimini Street. I've been here for about 9 years. When I joined the company, we were $20 million in revenue. We're $300 million now, and we have 1,200 employees, and we have worked with 25% of the store's 100 retail companies. So we know a little bit about helping companies through retail. This slide right here is from McKinsey. I started my career at Accenture because I couldn't get into McKinsey, Bain, or Booz Allen. Anyone work for McKinsey, Bain, or Booz Allen? Those were the real smart companies. It was like growing up in New York City and you had to take that test in junior high school to see if you could go to Bronx Science, Stuyvesant, or Brooklyn Tech. Anyone take that test? Yeah, oh, you took it back there. All right, I like it. That was interesting. I took the test. I got into a couple of those schools, but I chose to go to public school. PS 26, Ryan Junior High School, Francis Lewis High School, all in Queens. And then I got lucky enough to go to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, which I'm not sure I would have gone there if I could do it all over again, but I had a great guidance counselor that said you should set your sights higher than SUNY Binghamton or SUNY Albany. And I'm like, really? There's better stuff than that? And I did, and I got into RPI, and I got out with a computer science degree. And I remember graduating back then, AI was the next big thing in 1987. And now AI really is big because we actually have the compute power to do the machine learning. Now, McKinsey, if you haven't worked there, my slide deck's going to be available. And in the speaker notes, there's some excellent links to some interviews that McKinsey's done with some top retailers. One of them that I really liked was with the CFO of McDonald's. So back in 2015, McDonald's had like 6 straight quarters of declining same-store sales. Since then, they've had like 15 of increasing same-store sales. And they spoke to the CFO, not the CEO, not some other business person, but the CFO. And the CFO said that we increased our investment. This is a $20 billion company, McDonald's. We've increased our investment in technology more than any other line item on the balance sheet. And they said, okay, so what did you do? They spent $1 billion in changing their stores. So I hadn't been to a McDonald's for a while. Yesterday, I had lunch at a McDonald's on like 54th and 8th. And it was actually pretty cool. I ordered my meal from the kiosk. So they invested a ton of money in these kiosks. They invested a lot of money they acquired 2 technology companies that have decreased the drive-through time for every order by 20 seconds. They have breakfast all day now. They have like 10 different coffees, including espressos that you can buy, to compete with Starbucks, to compete with Dunkin' Donuts. It's a really cool experience. You can order your coffee, and you can say, I'm from your cell phone, and you can say, I'm in this spot in the parking lot, and they bring your coffee out to you. So they've done some really, really neat things. They spent a lot of money on delivery, and they partnered with Uber Eats, and they partnered with Grubhub. They have replaced frozen meat with fresh meat, and burger sales went up 30%. They put the word buttermilk in their chicken, and sales went way up. So they've done some really cool, really smart things. But in order to do that, you have to find the money from somewhere to pay for it. Wendy's became a client of ours, I think, right before McDonald's started turning their act around. And Wendy's used all the money that they saved with us by cutting their SAP and Oracle expenses, and I'll get into that in a little minute. And they invested in kiosks before McDonald's did in their stores, and it was a big increase in sales for them. So the key is you've got to find money to invest in some of these innovations that you're going to use to move the needle for your company. And when I say move the needle, you shouldn't invest in anything that's not going to increase your revenue, cut your costs, take market share from your competitors, or avoid an unmitigated disaster. And the fourth one, hopefully you don't have to do too much of that. So let's jump into this. This is, you'll all know this, but key retail priorities here. Price. Price is really hard to change these days or be really competitive. Price is kind of everybody knows that they've got to have a reasonable price. Convenience. That's kind of also a commodity these days. Convenience is something that you have to have. It's table stakes in the game. But the real game changer is in assortment and customer experience. And I won't go into too much of why, but you all know that people will pay a little bit more money if they can have something that's a great experience. So if you can change that customer experience for your clients, you're obviously going to get more clients and you're going to sell more. Now, how many of you either work in or are related to IT in your organization? Okay, a decent amount. Good, because that's really our target audience here to talk to. And if you're not, and you're in some other part of retail, you can feed back to your IT people things that they might need to look at. This is the second largest CIO survey in the world from Gartner Group. You've all heard of Gartner Group, big IT analyst firm. They've asked CIOs, where's all their budget dollars spent? 90% is spent keeping the lights on, leaving only 10% for innovations. And when I say keeping the lights on, it's investing typically in monstrous software from big companies like SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, IBM. And they have good products, really good products, but you really have to watch where you're spending that money. Don't just buy everything and continuously renew every time that they talk about doing that. Because what you really want to do is you want to free up that budget to fund new innovative technologies. One of the issues with these big software companies is that they're all selling perpetual software right now, and the world is kind of moving to the cloud or moving to software as a service. Now, Salesforce.com figured that out. Companies like Workday on the HCM side figured that out. But when you look at Oracle and SAP, sure, they have cloud products, but the majority of their revenue still comes from the on-prem products. Oracle's a $40 billion company as an example. $20 billion of their revenue comes from maintenance related to their on-prem products. They make 96% profit margins on that maintenance if you look at their financials. So when you're spending $1 million or $2 million a year for annual maintenance to get new product updates and support from a company like Oracle, 96% of that is going to the bottom line. So you need to look at how you can change that. The other problem is you're forced to do upgrades just to stay supported. The rule of thumb, if you're spending, let's say, $1 million in annual maintenance, is a major upgrade is going to cost you $2 million, and you're going to do one every 5 years. The other rule of thumb is if you're looking to migrate, or I can't even say upgrade because there's no upgrade path, from like an SAP ECC6, which is their core product today, to an S/4HANA, the rule of thumb is you'll spend $35 million to do that upgrade over 7 years for every $1 million that you're spending today in annual maintenance on the on-prem products. So you've got a challenge here. And I'm going to go into some detail about this right now. Let me just stop and say, for all of you that don't understand what this word maintenance is, when you buy new software, let's say you spend $10 million on the new software. Every year you spend roughly 20% on annual maintenance, or $2 million a year. Does that make sense? You're all familiar with that, right? That's not news to you. So if you're spending $2 million with your software vendor, like an Oracle and SAP and IBM, a Microsoft, but this is specifically for Oracle and SAP. We know this data because it comes from over 70 of our actual clients who have given this data to a company called Nucleus Research that did this study. So this isn't just marketing material. This is actual data, and this is the average savings. Some companies have saved a ton more. Some companies have saved less, so your mileage may vary. We're going to do some math. If you're spending $2 million on annual maintenance, I told you the average rule of thumb is you'll spend double that, or $4 million on an upgrade. You'll do an upgrade every 5 years. If I divide $4 million by 5 years, you're spending $800,000 a year on upgrades. You don't need to do those upgrades because those products are not changing tremendously. If you look at Oracle's own application user group survey, the OAUG survey, 73% of the survey respondents said they upgraded for one primary reason. What do you think that is? Anybody want to guess? Support's expiring. You got it. I heard a couple people with the right answer. But it's just because support's expiring. When I left Accenture after 6 years there, and I moved to a company called PeopleSoft in 1993, we had maybe 200 employees when I went there. When I left 8 years later, we were a multi-billion-dollar company that eventually got acquired by Oracle. But back in that day, nobody complained about paying maintenance because they were getting so much for their money. You know, the product was still pretty new. There were tons of new features and functionality coming out. The support was great. You fast forward today, though, and this is 30, 40-year-old mature software, and you ask yourself, what can these software vendors do to general ledger, accounts payable, fixed assets, accounts receivable, human capital management, supply chain that hasn't already been done? The answer is not a whole lot. The product is pretty good, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it in many, many ways. So the forced upgrades can go away. Customization support. Our company, what we do for half the price of Oracle or SAP is we take over maintenance support. So we fix all the problems that break for you if you come to us. 60% of all the cases or calls that we get are related to custom code, interfaces, integrations, performance tuning, how-to questions. None of that is covered by the Oracle and SAP maintenance. All of that you have to pay for consultants to get from an Oracle or SAP. So if you think about what causes the product to actually break, software doesn't wear out. The average SAP or Oracle customer is in production on a release of software that's been GA or generally available for 8 years. So it's 8 years old. In the first, 2 or 3 years, all the bugs will come out of that software, 99% of them, and they'll be available for you to take those fixes. So then you ask yourself, what causes the software to break after that? Because software doesn't wear out. It's really two things. You change the code or you change the data. So the software sees a new condition that it's never been tested for before, and then it breaks. Now, you have to change the code and change the data to run your business. Many people think that's a bad thing. Oh, I can't change anything. It has to be completely vanilla. That's not true. You can't run your business unless you configure the system to meet the needs of your business. Even the new cloud SaaS product. People think these are like set it and forget it. No way. We're in the Salesforce.com business right now. And for every dollar spent on Salesforce software, Salesforce will tell you $4 are spent on configuration, consulting, systems integration, making the product run. So none of these products are really just set it and forget it, and there's nothing you need to do. Now, the last piece there is what we call self-support. Self-support is when you have something that breaks, typically the big software vendors are going to say, yep, we fixed it, but it's fixed in the next release. Or 60% of the time, it's not going to be fixed at all, like I said earlier. If it's fixed in the next release, or it's in a support pack, or it's in an enhancement pack, they typically come with hundreds of other fixes. And you have to test all of it together. You can't just take that one fix. So you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars regression testing all these other fixes that come with the software, and that's another wasted spend. When we find a problem, we fix it in the release of software that the customer is running. And it doesn't matter if that software is supported or not by Oracle or SAP. We will guarantee you support for 15 years from the day you sign up with us on any version of the software that you're running, so you don't have to do those upgrades just to stay supported. So think about that. You can take all this money and you can put it towards things like headless commerce, e-commerce, mobile first, big data. You can just put it right to the bottom line in terms of price. So your $4 million spend, when you add up everything on the left, can go down to $1 million. And these are just examples of things you can do, not just with a Rimini Street, but there's a whole bunch of companies out there. There's a company called Curvature that does this for Cisco. There's a company called Origina that does this for IBM. You should really, really look at some of these opportunities. Whoops, I went back. Okay. Has anybody heard of a company called Panaya? It's an Israeli company that focused on SAP upgrades. Anybody heard of them? They were acquired by Infosys and then they were spun out. So you would use Panaya software before you're doing an SAP upgrade, and you'd also use it afterwards to make sure that the upgrade was successful. What this software result here is for all the major features and functionality with SAP ECC 6 Enhancement Pack 6. This is just one release of the software. Panaya software actually tells you if the code was ever executed. So when they add up all the analysis from all the clients that they've worked with, the most used code was logistics in operations, sales, and service, and that code was only executed by 13% of the organizations. So you think you're doing all these upgrades because you want these new features and functionality. The code's never executed. It's hardly ever executed by those numbers. And those are the most used features and functionality. So you're doing these upgrades just to stay supported, and they cost you a lot of money, and you don't need to do them. You can save a ton of money here. So, and I think this applies to IBM, this applies to Microsoft. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that the systems won't work if you don't do the upgrades. That's not true. The tech stack compatibility is very, very strong between the hardware, between the operating systems, between the database, between the applications. It all works really, really well together. And it's designed to be backwards compatible, despite some of the quote-unquote horror stories that you might hear. And you can ask us about any specific question you'd like in terms of tech stack compatibility of any software that you're on. So, what we think you should do is keep your core ERP systems intact. Keep your existing ERP system and take that money to innovate around the edges with all the excellent retail innovations that you're hearing at the show today. Do not spend a ton of money on the core ERP system, which is where a large percentage of that 90% of the IT budget is going to today. Free that up so you can get more like 60-40 and you can actually fund these incredible retail innovations. That's what we think you should do. So if you do that, you can go from 90-10 to, let's say, 60-40, and you can fund everything that you're going to do to move the needle for your company, increase your revenue, cut your costs, take market share from your competitors. Just a whole bunch of retail clients that have worked with Rimini Street and done business with us. Our typical logo slide. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you attending.